Thank you, Shai. Dear friends, I do have to say that I feel some kind of relief because I was afraid that Shai was going to say, let's all enjoy this evening despite the fact that we are going to hear from Minister Yuli Edelstein. And he didn't say that. He's a real friend. Anyway, welcome, and I have the perfect right really to say welcome to all of you because, as it was just mentioned, we've been anticipating this event for a very long time. I happen to be the co-chairman of this informal gathering of Jewish parliamentarians for a long time. And I guess I was less successful than the ones who are doing the job right now. But thanks really, Shai, and all of you. Thanks for doing that. Congressman Ackerman, thanks for your words. I, for one, really enjoyed your speech. There were very important messages, and I'm sure that you spoke on behalf of many of us here in this room. My dear friend Ron Lauder, I do have to thank the Congress for helping us to put this event together. As it was mentioned, our partners actually in organizing this event. I do have to say that when they ask me to address a group in the Knesset, be it of parliamentarians or just some delegation, I always have one and the same opening. I always say, you're in the Knesset on a very special day. And I never lie. Every day in the Knesset is a very special day. But I do have to say that these times really are interesting times. And to prove it, let's all of us just close our eyes and think back just half a year. Could many of us, I don't want to be politically incorrect and say, could any of us, but could many of us really imagine all the changes going in the area, all the things that have been happening in Egypt, Tunisia, Yemen, and let's continue the list to say nothing about Syria? I think that really it gives a lot of hope. It gives hope that things are somehow changing. I remember distinctly that when we were talking several years ago about the possibility of these changes, well, we were in the best case mocked. No one took it as a serious political theory ever. But having said that, I do want to warn all of us that we are entering a very long and definitely complicated process. One may say, how do you know? Well, in general, I'm an optimist. Because when I was leaving, quote-unquote, Mother Russia, after a number of years as a refusenik and some of them in the Gulag, and I was crossing the border in the Sheremetyevo airport in Moscow, and I looked back, I saw my parents and my younger brother standing on the other side of the border. And I looked at them, and I said to myself, dear Yuli Edelstein, look at them. This is the last time you see them. Because it was July '87. You could cross that border only in one direction. There was no second crossing. A year or a year and a half later, it was the question of $500 just to pay for a plane ticket and go. And that's what I did. '89, less than 2 years later, I bought a plane ticket, got a visa in London, and traveled back. And I could embrace my family there. But, having said all that, when we look at the changes happening in Eastern Europe or the former Soviet Union, it's not completed. The changes are still going on in many countries. And you know, probably food for thought for our area would be that those who are doing better progress are the countries that, shall we say, had democratic experience before Warsaw Pact was formed. I don't know of too many countries in our area that had democratic experience. So I guess we're entering a lot of turmoil here and ups and downs. I sincerely hope and pray, and I'm sure that my feelings are being shared by most people in this room, that the changes will be completed in the best possible positive way. But let's all be prepared for a long process. We are facing, with all these changes notwithstanding, a lot of challenges right now as we speak, on different levels. You know, I wouldn't surprise you if I would say that in my capacity as Minister of Public Diplomacy, I'm most of my time busy with this thing that I'm even ashamed to mention to you, this stupid flotilla experience. But last year we were taught a very serious lesson. We also said kind of, okay, no, it's so not serious. It's not about aid, it's not about any serious political development, it's not a diplomatic effort. And then we were, as I've said honestly to you, taught a very hard lesson. So we are taking it seriously. Yeah, these people are strange. I can't really understand where they come from. I can't really understand how come that they call black white and white black and live in this topsy-turvy illusionary world of their own. But I have to take it seriously, and we have to get prepared, and we are devoting a lot of time and effort to this. And I'm glad at least to state that most governments all around the world and the United Nations are at least calling on these strange fellows, don't do that, work in different ways. I hope that this time, you know, at least we'll be able to deal with this successfully, definitely in the battlefield if necessary, but definitely in the field of public diplomacy or diplomacy in general. There are good signs to that. But the challenges are even coming further down the road. When these days they ask me, how are you getting, Minister, how are you getting ready for September? I have to, in a very good old Jewish manner, answer back with a question and say, what do you mean? Because September definitely is about this vote in the UN. And I do have to address it, because I, for one, once again, I don't think that we are facing an earthquake or something of the time, as some of my colleagues suggested, but I do, once again, want to take it seriously, because it's not about what kind of influence this UN decision, if unfortunately taken, would have in practical terms. Probably it even won't have too many results in practical terms. But I'm really scared that it could become, pardon me for putting it in such a grave manner, but kind of the last nail in the coffin of the peace process. Because it will be such an unfortunate message to the Palestinians that basically they don't have to negotiate. They don't have to compromise. They don't even have to come into a room with the Israelis. They can get it their way, via the United Nations, with a lot of misguided countries and governments saying, okay, you know, we will support it. It sounds right. Sounds right. Who's against this Palestinian state? Sounds right. Why don't we vote? And as there are all kinds of rumors going around, I want to say loud and clear. For the last nearly 2.5 years, our Prime Minister and our government, including all the coalition partners, have been saying loud and clear, we want the Palestinians to come and negotiate without any preconditions. All these talks about, you know, some coalition parties trying to undermine his efforts, as a member of the ruling party and as someone, you know what, don't quote me on that, as someone who's considered pretty hard-nosed inside the Likud, I can tell you no one is going to undermine Prime Minister's efforts to bring the Palestinians into a negotiation room, sit down by the negotiations table and start really discussing with all the issues being on the table. If this challenge is not enough, and we are making a lot of diplomatic efforts, but just think of it. On nearly the same dates in New York, once again, a strange event is being planned called Durban 3. And yes, I do have to say, and I know that we have Americans, I mean elected officials from the States here, and the Canadians and some others, and I want to say that we did notice, and we do appreciate the fact that the governments of several countries, including the countries I mentioned, said from the very first moment, we are not there. We are not in this Durban game, and we don't want even to be part of it, and pretend that if we engage with the organizers, probably some good decisions against xenophobia, racism, or whatever, or anti-Semitism could be taken. We know the purpose of this gathering. By the way, if I were just a professional, I could say great copyright. Someone who 10 years ago created that idea of Israel being an apartheid state, I think if he were my campaign advisor, I could pay him nice money, because the idea, I guess, was a brilliant idea, and we've been fighting it ever since. But once again, we devote an effort to fighting that, and in general, I would say. And all these things, I'm kind of mentioning several events. Unconnected? No, closely connected. Because this whole idea of Israel being an apartheid state is part of the change of the focus of those who are attacking Israel. It's not with planes. It's not even with Molotov cocktails and guns. It's soft power. You know, internet. Such a wonderful thing. We all enjoy it. How did we live without it? But on the other hand, it gives opportunities to those who want to replace freedom of speech with freedom of hatred, and freedom of expression with freedom of expressing terrible views that I already mentioned of xenophobia and anti-Semitism and whatever. They're there. They're very good. They're attacking all the time. And they are pushing their ideas using one terrible thing. No, not the things that we all have to deal with, and I hope time will be devoted to that at this conference, what we as parliamentarians can do in terms of legislation, because we all know that there are problems with legislation as far as the internet is concerned. But they are using one terrible thing: ignorance. Ignorance about what Israel is. I'm not talking politics. I'm not talking the conflict. This thing is not possible in the minds of most people on this planet. In Israel, people don't sit around tables and eat and listen to speeches. In Israel, people fight all the time. There's barbed wire all over. I know in this intelligent audience, some people would say, hey, you're slightly exaggerating. What kind of things are you talking about? Before this last thing called Israel Apartheid Week, that unfortunately took place in March, we decided to fight back. Not by going there and shouting at those who are doing things, by sending average Israelis before that to the campuses talking about Israel. A nice Arab girl from Nazareth, and we have it on tape, comes back and says on one of the campuses, American campuses, listen carefully, someone says to her, how come you speak Arabic? She says, I'm an Arab. But you said you were from Israel. Yes, I'm an Arab from Israel. There's dead silence. After a pause, someone says, ah, so you're a Jewish Arab. She says, no, I'm a Muslim. To that, no one had an answer. A real story that happened a couple of months ago. This is what we have to deal with. That's why I think that before talking about legislation, the big things, I think fighting ignorance about Israel brings us to a much better place than the one we are at right now in terms of all kinds of international votes and attacks on Israel. The moment people will realize how many things are going on in this country, I think it will be much easier for us to talk about bigger issues. So I want once again to thank everyone for being here and for coming. I haven't even mentioned a serious number of other challenges in the field of anti-Semitism and Holocaust remembrance and things that I'm absolutely sure are dear and important to all of us and are kind of common denominator in this room. But as I don't want you to really suspect that all the other speakers will also speak for such a long time, I will cut it here and I will say once again, repeating the phrase of Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, how nice it is for brothers to sit together, I will say that there is another phrase in the Jewish sources. לא עליך המלאכה לגמור, ואין אתה בן חורין להיבטל ממנה. It's not for you to finish the job, but you are not free either not to start it. Thank you very much.